Hi, I'm Taylor Haas. This is Danny Shirey. Welcome to another edition of Penguins 24/7. We are coming to you from PPG Paints Arena, where the Penguins just beat the Ducks 4-3 in overtime. We can probably work our way backwards and start in overtime. I mean, there's a lot to talk about this game. It's a crazy game.
It certainly didn't feel like the Penguins were going to come out on top 4-3 in this one, especially as we got into the later stages of the game. But in overtime, there's a little bit of back and forth action there before the eventual game winner from Jake Guentzel. The Ducks had like a half-ice breakaway. It was Trevor Zegras bearing down on Casey DeSmith with all the time in the world, and he ended up overpassing, and they didn't even end up getting an attempt off there. And the Penguins race down the ice. Sidney Crosby makes a really nice pass to Guentzel right as they're entering the zone. And Guentzel, unlike we've seen this Penguins team do a lot of times and try and force passes through sticks and lanes that aren't there, Guentzel just went ahead and ripped it, and it ended up beating Gibson for the overtime winner.
Yeah, I mean, Sullivan has talked about before how, you know, this team has not been as good as they need to be in overtime at 3-on-3, and they've been leaving a lot of points on the table because of it. But I mean, you mentioned the Zegras breakaway. Given who it is, Trevor Zegras, I mean, one of the top stars in the NHL right now.
Casey DeSmith.
Well, yeah, you asked
shootout master.
You asked Casey about what was going through his mind when Trevor Zegras was coming down on the breakaway. This is what he said.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's the shootout master, but you know, I saw Strome there back door. I didn't think he was going to give it to him, and then he tried, and I didn't think Strome thought he was going to give it to him either. Got lucky there, and you know, thankfully Gens buried on the other end for us.
Yeah, I think that's where I expected it to end, but I mean, just the Penguins rallying, being able to force overtime, a good response from them. I don't think, as bad as this Ducks team is, I don't think this is a game that I thought would go to overtime. Not when you want to see go to overtime, but the response, I think, was something good to see.
Yeah, obviously you don't want your team to just keel over, especially against a team that's at the bottom of the NHL standings, right? We talked to Jake Guentzel afterward, and we were like, you know, what was kind of going through everybody's minds on the bench after the Ducks did go up 3-2 late in regulation. He's like, look, like we know we're a good team, and we know we had a job to do, so we went out there and did it. Yeah. Can't get too down on ourselves because they know that that's not going to help them, and I do think at times that mindset can kind of hurt them, and maybe with their urgency and not having enough of it. But at the same time, it certainly worked out well for them tonight. Yeah,
this is what Jake Guentzel had to say about that rally.
Yeah, you just got to stay with it. That's the only way you can do it. There wasn't much time left, so you can't get too down on yourself. You just got to go to the next shift and next play, and we just kept fighting, and we got it.
I mean, the Penguins, you know, it's not a game you want to see go to overtime. They're also missing a ton of key people. Jan Rutta missed this game. A lot. How many of the defensemen around? And it's like a bunch of key defensemen. Petrie, obviously. Letang's still away. Letang should be coming back in a couple of days. That'll be good for the power play. Not that the power play looked horrendous in this game, but just the streak they're on is a little concerning. You know, in the 12 games before Letang got hurt, he got hurt before he left for his father. The power play was operating at 39%. It was like one of the top power plays in the league in that stretch. And then in the 8 games since then, they're operating at about 8%. It was like 3 for 37, I think, after this game. So concerning to see that. But yeah, that's something that, I don't know, hopefully should change in a couple days whenever Letang's ready to get back in.
Right. Yeah. I know people keep calling for personnel changes, but don't forget that earlier this year when Brian Rust was still on the top power play unit, it was, oh, let's get Ricard Raquel up on the top unit in his place, and that'll fix all the problems, right? Well, he went up there and the power play started playing well, but Raquel's been on the top power play unit this entire time there, right? So I really do think the common denominator here is the Ty Smith factor. And not that I don't think that Ty Smith has been thrown into a role, not only just as a regular top pairing guy with Brian Dumoulin, but then getting thrown onto a top power play unit with several future Hall of Famers. That's no easy task after you spent your first 30 games of the season in the AHL. But at the same time, I don't think it's out of the question to say that you're going from a pretty significant drop-off from Chris Letang to Ty Smith quarterback in your top.
Yeah, and Ty Smith, I think what we've seen it from him, he's deferring maybe too much to, obviously, the Stars. Instead of, he's, you know, in Wilkes-Barre, he's really good at getting the puck through to the net himself and then creating that movement, creating those rebound opportunities. I guess there's not as much pressure to defer to like Puustinen and Nylander than there is to like Crosby, Malkin, which makes sense. But something to keep an eye on. It's not like a long-term concern when Petrie and Letang should be back at some point. But we're going to take a break here. We're going to come back and talk about the rest of the game. All right, we're continuing to work our way backwards in the game in this little breakdown. But, I mean, what a game for the second line to start. Just, what do you want to...
Yeah, unlike, and I don't think any of the other three lines necessarily had poor nights. I think the top line maybe struggled to transition the puck effectively, or at least to a level that they would have liked. But the second line, it seemed like they were just having their way with the Ducks. It seemed like they were creating plenty of chances for themselves. They were out attempting them in shot attempts to a pretty hefty degree, and it just seemed as though they were a threat all night. Of course, Jason Zucker, who's been the engine that can be for this team, he was once again out there on the forecheck. He scored a huge goal. He was trying to feed Rickard Rakell out front, and it was deflected off a defender's stick, and all of a sudden he went heel to heel and wrapped it around and tucked it past Gibson. It was really just something to behold. And on top of that, Rickard Rakell had a pretty good game too. He was definitely looked like he was getting up for this one against his former team.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, Malkin, the sequence that led to Malkin's goal, they got a couple of shots in quick succession, and then, you know, popped out to Malkin and he put it in. But yeah, just yeah, like you said, top line hasn't really been glowing so much. They've been kind of cold lately, but second line, nice to see. That's why I know people keep clamoring for Rakell to go back up on the top line with Sid, but with the way, I don't know, I think Malkin's line is looking right now, I don't think I'd want to break that up.
Right, and of course there's always the temptation to want to get, you know, the best wingers up there with Crosby and get Crosby his points or whatever. And this is coming from someone who thinks that Crosby maybe should be playing with Rakell over a long period of time. Getzel, Crosby, Rust have played a ridiculous amount of hockey together. I think regardless of any slumps or rough stretches that they go through, that they have the ability to kind of work through or work their ways out of that. And we even saw a little bit of that. I know the Penguins had the extra attacker out there on Rust's goal, but I mean, they were working the puck around pretty well, and you can see that chemistry that's always there. Whether it's present every night is a different story.
Yeah. Coaching decision in this game, Dejan Heinen was a healthy scratch. Dejan Heinen hasn't scored in, what, 30-something games? Was it back in Columbus before they went out west? Was that it?
Yeah, I love Danton Heinen, but he has just been a passenger for the majority of the season. Yeah. You know, I see a lot of people talk about that he's not really doing anything for this team if he's not scoring. Last year, I would have said that wasn't the case, but this year, I really think it is. To your point, I think he started the season with like 5 points in 6 games, 6 points in 6 games, something like that. Was a huge factor in the Penguins' win that you referenced in Columbus very early in the season. I know he was playing up on the top line with Crosby in that game, but it's just like, what the heck happened? Because even a few games prior to that, Heinen was playing down, I believe it was on the third line, and he was playing with a confidence that was like, holy crap, thank God they got this guy back for $1 million this season.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, he has the penalty killing abilities, but it's like, okay, even when he's not scoring, you got to keep him in the lineup, or like he's so strong defensively that it's like, okay, yeah. So what they did, they called up Jonathan Gruden from Wilkes-Barre. I know people were upset that it wasn't Nylander or Puustinen, but if you've been following Wilkes-Barre, Jonathan Gruden in his last 3 games was scoring more than anyone down there. 5 goals in his last 3 games. He had back-to-back 2-goal games. He's also, Wilkes-Barre, for, you know, since he's been down there, since they got him in the Matt Murray trade, he's their best defensive forward, one of their best penalty-killing forwards. So he's doing that, and now he's also scoring a lot on top of it. He really made the decision. It couldn't have been easier if they were going to call up a forward to call up him. So yeah, he centered the 4th line. I thought he had a pretty all right debut. We didn't see a whole lot of him. I don't know what his final ice time ended up being. It wasn't too high. That was less an indication of how he played and more just like the flow of the game. I asked Sullivan about it after. He said that's not how he intended on using his bench in this game. It was more so, I mean, they spent, you know, how much on special teams in this game. So there's not as much opportunity to get Gruden out there. Gruden can penalty kill, but he hasn't had a full practice with this team since he got recalled. He just had the morning skate, so they're not just going to throw him right out there on the penalty kill. Yeah, but I thought he had a pretty all right game. A couple hits, takeaways. He almost scored in the first period, but he took a shot and went off a duck and hit the post. It came pretty close.
Yeah, there were several occasions too. I was paying a little bit more attention to him in the defensive zone, and there were several instances where he possessed the puck behind the Penguins' net or below the goal line, and that I think just speaks to how conscientious he is in his own zone, that he's down that low and grinding along the wall and behind the net, taking care of his own business first before the Penguins even think about getting up ice. And when they did that, like you said, he went in and rang a shot off the play.
Yeah, yeah, good game from him. Good first debut. I'd like to see more of him just to see what they have. Hopefully he sticks around for that.
It's not like the rest of the guys in the bottom six are exactly blowing the doors off the opposition.
Yeah, it's not like, okay, they got to get Dayton Heinen back in. Maybe if Josh Archibald or Ryan Poehling are ready to come back in, they get back in. But if not, I hope we see more of Jonathan Gruden. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know, get some youth back in. He can play center if he can earn a spot at this level at center. I don't know, maybe you can keep Jeff Carter on the wing moving forward. Something to watch for. But that's it from this game. Keep an eye out for our coverage on DK Pittsburgh Sports.